Good afternoon, Naomi. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. Blessed, as always, in all ways. You, young lady, are on-screen diversity executive, public speaker, broadcast TV producer, director, entrepreneur.
Yes, sir.
Wearing so many hats. Talk about your journey, Naomi, because you've done some fabulous things that, for me, need to be highlighted. I'm not sure everybody's aware of your contribution to the media space.
Yeah, so I started off at MTV, and it's a really weird, funny story how I got in there, but I started off at MTV as an intern, and I knew that I had to be in television or somewhere inside there. Now, I grew up in New York, and my mother said to me that you've got to get your education, you've got to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a business person, like I'm sure lots of Black parents, African parents, Caribbean parents have said to their kids. And I said, no, I want to be a movie star. My mother sent me to boarding school in England. So she said, you're not doing that. You're not doing that. Anyway, I got into television because I felt that there was some need. And I realized later on that it wasn't to be on TV necessarily. It was to have a voice. It was to say something that was so integral in me, which I didn't even know at the time, that spurred me on to get into TV. So I got into TV as an intern, decided there's no way that I was going to get chucked out of here after the 3 weeks I was supposed to be there. And I just made myself indispensable. And I became, over the years, a producer, director, presenter of MTV News. And then I couldn't stand working for anybody. Again, there was this bubbling up of, I can't stand working for someone. So I left that, became freelance, but at the same time, opened up my very first business, which was MBS, had a few commissions from there. Loved it. And then I decided that actually, you know what, I want to get back into broadcast. And I became one of the very first producers of Big Brother. And I produced the very first show of Big Brother, in fact, in the UK, which was great. Then Celebrity Brother came. And again, I had this horrible feeling that I shouldn't be here. So I left television completely. I just thought, I can't do this reality TV. TV is not for me. I still needed to find my voice. And so I went into property of all things, and I became a property investor. And the reason why I became a property investor is because I understood when I was at Big Brother that they were paying me this much. And I knew that because of the telephone, everyone was ringing in and saying that they wanted this person out or this person in or whatever. The company, Endemol Shine, Endemol at the time, was getting that much money. And they were paying us producers only that much. And I just thought, I was spending my time in a darkened studio, 23 cameras, all night, looking at people I didn't care for, getting paid nothing. So I felt like I was trading my time for a measly bit of money. And that's the reason why I went into property. And I went into property knowing that I was in a huge amount of debt, but thinking I'm going to make this work. And so I did make it work. I paid £16,000 to actually do the course. But I thought to myself, if I do that, I need to get the return of investment. So how am I going to do that? I knew I was a presenter. So I said, let me go onto the floor and start speaking and training people how to do this. And as I was doing that, I was just accumulating my properties. And all of a sudden, I became financially free. And I suddenly realized I didn't have to work for anybody ever again. Well, not ever again. I didn't have to work at that time. I didn't have to work for anyone because I was having passive income coming in. And so I set up my next business. And the business I set up was called Global Infinity. And it was to do with intentionality. How was I able to intuit all of this stuff? What was going on in my brain? Why didn't I take the usual route of business and work? And through quantum physics, I actually realized that we're far more powerful than what we've been conditioned to believe. And it was those tools that I now suddenly understood how to actually manipulate those tools within myself that got me further and further and further and further. So I created something called the Billionaire Ladies Club, after that, because I realized a lot of women came up to me and said, I want to be like you, I want to present like you, I want to have passive income, I want to be financially free, blah, blah, blah. I kept on saying, you can go to this guy, that guy, this guy. And they were like, no, 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 we want you. So I felt it was a duty as a Black female to help other Black females to become financially free. I hated the Billionaire Ladies Club. And the reason why was because it was literally all women wanting me to do their business for them, instead of them taking their own responsibility to do it for themselves. And so it stressed me out no end that I decided that I was going to quit it and take a whole year out and sit and do jack shit, excuse my language, just to understand what I wanted to do. And then what happened is that I went into, I got called into a charity called Media Trust to train young people on how to make powerful videos. I started working with YouTube, started working with Google and all sorts of places. And then I realized that actually there was something else I needed to do. I needed to get more information about AI and VR, and because it was all about this emotional response that we have and how our emotions actually inform our neurology, which informs our behavior. And that just kind of like was really what I was involved with all of that kind of like VR, AR, compassion and empathy, blah, blah, blah. And that's when Channel 4 found me again and stole me away from Media Trust and said, you've got to work with us in diversity inclusion. And so I started working for Channel 4 2 years ago, well, it's 2018, yeah, 2 years ago, in their diversity and inclusion remit. And I was like, I can't be here. I just can't be here. And it only just happened very recently, especially with COVID, that I got COVID, my mother got COVID, my sons got COVID, and it floored me because I'm never ill. And I just thought, Jesus Christ, what is going on? I'd forgotten what it was like to be ill. And I realized that one very important factor, whilst everyone was being furloughed, losing their jobs, not having any money because they're freelance or self-employed, I didn't have to worry because I was financially free. I was sufficient. I can actually hold my own. I can look after my mother. I can look after my kids. I can buy the food. I can just carry on because I had passive income streams coming through. And that suddenly put a big light bulb moment in me, which actually said to myself, well, if I can do this, anyone else can do this. But what really hit me hard was that the Black Lives Matter movement suddenly made me realize that to have real power, you have to have financial power. As well as anybody else, other things, you have to have financial power, because your voice and the way you actually use your money is how you actually stand in stature in society. You wouldn't see them doing in the United States, doing that to the Jewish community, because they have financial power. And because Black people in the United States don't have as much power as they think they have, certainly don't have much power in the political field or in the social arena, or they don't use it enough, that we're seeing all this horrible stuff that's going on. In the UK, because we see people having one income stream, they're on the front end, they are exposed to COVID, and if they lose that job, they have nothing else, so they have to go to work because they got one income stream. That means that they are putting themselves into danger. So this is where Swiipe Wealth came in. Get your passive income streams going on. Start to build your power economically, financially, socially, and you won't have to be subject to force majeure, what we're happening right now with COVID, or nonsense that happened in the United States.
Talk about, before we get into Swiipe Health, some of the pivotal moments for you. You've mentioned one at Channel 4 without mentioning it. I don't know if that was on purpose, but what were the pivotal moments? Like, what the best years at MTV? Obviously, that's where you started. And what made you think, okay, I've got to leave? Obviously, that pursuit of financial freedom kind of happened as a byproduct of you falling into the property market. But what made you say, I've served my purpose at these institutions that you've been at? And you know, talk about the pivotal moments that maybe you've set light bulbs off.
Okay, I tell you, I know exactly the point that I left MTV. I loved MTV. MTV was the best time of my life because it felt like being at university, flying around the world, interviewing all these artists. It was just great. But the reason why I left was because I had a friend who said to me, I've got some free tickets to go to Cyprus. Would you come with me? I said, sure, I'll come with you. I've got loads of holidays. I'll take a week off. And this was at the time when it was, I think, of the second European Music Awards had happened, and everyone had gone off to Rotterdam or wherever it was. And I was left in the newsroom just to kind of like, just left in the newsroom because I didn't want to go to wherever it was. And I had done all my packages, I'd done all my interviews, I'd done all my editing. I had nothing to do that week. So I said to the director of news, I'm going to go off to Cyprus. He told me, no, I couldn't. I said, why not? And he said, just in case we need you in news. And I said, there are other people here that you can take. I've done everything. I've done all my packages for the EMAs. You don't need me. And he refused to let me go. I was livid. And it was the point when I thought, this man had power over my life, and I had no agency. I couldn't do anything. Otherwise, he was threatening me of me getting sacked. He treated me that way that he could actually sack me for going on holiday. And that's when I thought, can't do this. Don't want to work for anybody. In fact, I've only had 2 PAYE jobs in the whole of my life. And that was MTV and Media Trust. And that was it. I've never worked for anybody else. Because of that, I didn't want people to have control of my life. And so that's why I left MTV. And the reason why I left Big Brother was because of this feeling of I was being used as a cog in this big machinery that was making other people wealthy. And I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, I was just a cog making the programs and making them to the best of my ability, thinking that that's going to get me recognition. But I hit this wall, this invisible wall where they didn't want me to be a commissioner. They didn't want me to move further up than where I was as a producer. They didn't want me to be series producer. They didn't want me to go into leadership. I knew who I was. And I knew that I could not be there anymore. And that's the reason why I quit that. And I decided I needed financial freedom so I could do whatever the hell I like. And what I did with that financial freedom is I built a school in Sierra Leone.
Elaborate.
So I built a school. So when I did that, I had I became financially free. I got a whole lot of entrepreneurs together. We were doing this workshop on that were far more powerful than what we've been conditioned to believe. And I was telling them, this is why, this is how. And if you really want to, you can help me go and build a school. It's gonna, we're all gonna put money together. So collectively, we all put a whole lot of money together. Then I think there were about 6 of us who went over to Sierra Leone. And the reason why we went to Sierra Leone to do it is because my mother used to always tell me that she used to walk 20 miles in order to go to school. And there were no schools around her area. And so when I went there, when I was in my early 20s, there was only a primary school there. So we decided to build a secondary school so they didn't have to walk so long. And I believe that education is one of the key things for people to actually, not the education that you see in the UK, I think that's really archaic and old, but education of self, education of wealth, education of consciousness, education of who we are as human beings was really important. And so that's the reason why we built the school.
Quantum physics.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, you tried to bypass it and brush past it. I can tell it's played an integral part in your being.
Absolutely.
How so?
When I was I grew up in New York City, 3 girls from my parents, and being somebody from another country, as my mother was from Sierra Leone, she had to contain these 3 girls as we were growing up in New York City. So she would say to us, you are not going to go out and play like we want to, you're going to sit down and meditate. And we were like, what? And she was like, no, you're not going out. You're going to sit down and meditate. You're going to sit down and you're just going to just be there and be still. So she forced us, and I'm telling you, forced us to do that. After a while, we got used to it. But what happened is that we suddenly started to feel this expansion of thoughts and expansion. And we had these freaky things that used to happen to us, these little coincidences that we just thought, whoa, that's just unreal. So it followed us, the 3 girls, me and my sisters, it followed us until it got to a point when I was actually at MTV. where I was like, there's something we're not seeing. There's something happening in our terms of our communication. Like me and my sisters would do stuff and bang, something would happen. And we were like, whoa, that was just crazy. So I read this book and I said to him, I was trying to articulate it to my sister, and she said, Naomi, and by this time she's a scientist. And she said, Naomi, remember when Mum used to tell us to meditate? I think you should actually go and look into that and look into quantum. I was like, what the hell is quantum? So she told me about it. So I read it and I was just like, whoa, this is heavy stuff. So I took my cameras and I took my tripod. I took myself over to the United States to a place called the Institution of Noetic Science. And I interviewed all the great scientists like Deepak Chopra, Dean Radin, Fred Adam Wolf. And I interviewed them and asked them, what is this quantum stuff going on? And by that time, at that time, it was What the Bleep Do We Know was just about to come out. It hadn't come out yet, it was just about to come out. Dean Radin said to me, I was telling him about my experiences with my sisters. And he said to me, well, you're one of the few lucky ones whose parents actually understood the power of that without actually knowing. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, the fact that you meditated at so young while your mind was pliable, your frontal cortex suddenly started being fired off with loads of electrical information, which allowed you to see things that are, or feel and intuit things, which you wouldn't normally have if you weren't able to, if you didn't meditate. And that made me step back a minute and think, wow, well, where is that all coming from? And then I understood that our energy fields are filled with 400 billion bits of information, even more than that. That's only what scientists can detect with the technology they have now. But we're only conscious of only a slither of it, 2,000. And so the more you meditate, the more information just bleeds into your consciousness. And all of a sudden you start to think differently, you start to feel differently, you start to see the world differently, and then you act accordingly. And that's what happened to me when I was feeling it and intuiting that I shouldn't be here in this TV. I shouldn't be here doing that. I've got to be in my own agency, in my own power. And that was what was driving me. And I didn't know that until I got to quantum science.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I could talk about that for hours. I'm going to move on to Swiipe Health because I get the impression that everything you've just outlined feeds into this. And I'm going to read this line to you. We were never taught how to become wealth creators as a way of life in school. We are taught how to become employees. That stood out to me in particular because it's so true. And it's a conversation I have now as a father with my peers about how that was just so missing in our development as young men.
Absolutely.
How is Swiipe Health filling that void?
So it's called Swiipe Wealth. And the reason why I say that is because at school, and this is why I think it's so archaic, education only came about for those who had, who at that time in the Industrial Revolution had parents who were working in the factory. So they had to do something with those kids. So they gave them the most rudimentary type of education, which actually meant nothing. But what they realized is that we need more factory workers. So let's train them, condition them that they're going to be working for other people. So our whole school system, right, they always say, get your A levels, get your O levels, then you can get a job, and then you can always say you can get a job, you can get a job, you can get a just over broke is what I call it. But they never teach you the principles of how to become financially free. Now these principles, we don't know them. We're like, how do we get money? So all we think of is, I want money, I want money, I want money. But do you know how to maintain that money and protect that money? Do you know actually how to make that money so it's passive? Do you know how to make money for you? Instead of you trading your time, you actually trade your money to make money. No, we don't get taught that until you're much older. So Swiipe Wealth, because throughout my whole life, the underlining thing was finance for me, wasn't getting paid much, and I knew my value was more than what I was getting paid. Didn't like this because blah, 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 blah. Wanted to be a property investor because blah, 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 blah. I wanted my time back. Now, there's two most important things that people say they don't have. They don't have time, they don't have money. Yeah. Now, if you don't have time to do stuff, you're trading your time for money. And that's why you think you don't have time, because you're concentrating on trading your time in your job. You don't have money because your money only stretches for a certain amount, because we are not taught how to budget for a surplus. We actually get taught how to budget for a deficit. So we actually look at around us and say, I want those jeans, I want those trousers, blah, 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 blah. And the government will take its portion first. Then you want to go and buy your own stuff. Then you realize that you have to pay your bills. And then you pay your bills with a credit card, and then you're in deficit. So those principles are not taught to young people at the outset. And if they were, we wouldn't have such personal debt as we do now in the UK. So Swiipe Wealth undoes everything that we've learned and shows you good habits. And also it uses it. What I want to do with this program is to show you how your expertise, your values, your skill set, your experience can be packaged up into something so powerful that somebody else would want to buy it. We're in an information era right now, and there's lots of information that people like getting confused. What can I do? I can do this. I can make money of this. But it's actually you you're the wealth center. If you've got something that is so great that you love, and people always telling you, oh, you're a great hair barber, or you're really, really good at graphics, or you're really good at speaking, you can package that up, because I bet your bottom dollar other people will want to know how you do what you do. And that's one income stream. But even more than that, it's even bigger than that, because the whole idea of Swiipe Wealth is to get you to financial freedom, to start you on the road to financial freedom. And I give you the formula of what financial freedom is. And I'll tell you it right now. That formula is that your passive income has to be greater than your outgoing expenses in order for you to be financially free. So if we talk about your electricity, your gas, your all the things you have to pay, your council tax, you can't avoid paying those. If you've got passive income coming in and they're paying all of those things, and the wages you get from your job goes into your bank account, you don't have to pay out of your job those outgoings. Your passive income is going to handle that. Now you've got a lot of money. Now what you're going to do with that money? With that money, you can actually do something much greater than that to make more money, so that you can eventually get rid of your job. And that's when you stand on your own 2 feet. That's when you're financially free. What are you going to do with your time now? Now that you've got the money and you've got the time, who are you going to be? What's your greatest self at that point? How are you going to actually present yourself to the world as someone who's now garnering power? And so the next level of Swiipe Wealth is Swiipe Community. Well, because we know that people are going to have, we now know that, loads of people doing all these online stuff, there's going to be organizations who realize don't need this brick and mortar anymore. It's too much money. They're going to let it go. Now, can a community now take that with their passive income and their wealth and create it into a community hub where young people can actually go and learn about wealth and about other things, and to be, so the whole idea is like diversity is important in economics and wealth, and we've got to be able to stand up on our 2 feet so that we have the equal parity. Equal parity doesn't mean representation in Channel 4 or representation in BBC. That means absolutely nothing. Your power lies on how you live your lifestyle, and that means wealth and money.
There's going to be people watching this now who are going to be like, right, where do I find this? Where do I find this? How do I?
Well, I've got a landing page. It's a waiting list at the moment, because I know that loads of people are going to be wanting to come on, and I want to do it in one go so that so we all create a movement. Because my whole idea is that if we have lots of people on the platform at the same time, we're sharing information, and this is where the quantum bit goes in. We're sharing information from each other's energy field, and that means we innovate. We start to do something even bigger, even better, that no one's going to actually be left out. Everyone's going to go, whoa, yes, I can do this. So to go to that landing page, it's Swiipe Wealth, and it is spelled SWIIPE. So there's 2 I's in there. Swiipe Wealth /waiting list. So it's SWIIPE Wealth /waiting list. And you'll see there.
When are you looking like getting things going?
So November, it's going to be launched, because in November, I chose November because I am up for an award, Women Who Change the World, change our country. and I'm up for an award there. And I'm hoping if I get that, even if I don't get it, I don't care. November is going to be the time that I'm going to do a 5-week, that's when I launch it, and it's a 5-week course. You go home and you're at home, you do all the stuff, but then there's going to be a live every single week where we all get together, we all do this brainstorming, we all look at our skills and our expertise, we all learn how to package that up, we build the platform, and then we start to launch. And the whole idea is to get your 10K launch. So your launch can be anything from 5K to 10K. Could 10K do good for you in a month? Hell yeah, it can. The whole idea in the workshop, in the actual course, is what are you going to do with that money? How are you going to protect that money? And how do you make that money make money? So that you don't have to ever trade your time for money again, but you trade money for money. Money works for you. You don't work for it.
Naomi Sesay, absolute force that you are. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. I'm sure people are going to be, that waiting list is going to grow longer and longer as people dig down into who you are. I hope this has helped to kind of give them a little bit more insight. And I hope every venture that you touch is successful moving forward. Where can people follow you generally? Are you on any of the socials? What's the deal? Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can go to my website. I've got loads of articles and you can learn a little bit more about what I do there, which is naomisesay.com. And I am on LinkedIn. There's going to be, the landing page is actually going to be on LinkedIn, Naomi Sesay again. I'm going to put that on there as well. I'm also going to upload it onto Instagram. I don't use Instagram or any of those other social, like Twitter and stuff like that. And the reason why I don't is because I find it wastes my time, and I've got better things to do in my time than to be looking at Instagram and Twitter and Facebook all the time. But I will put those things up there. And what I'm really interested is getting a diverse group of people, especially Afro-Caribbean people, to actually start to become financially free. I think it's a must. I think that we need to actually start to move on what we know is true and be able to take our power to take it other places, because we don't have to, be quite honest, we don't have to do it this way that the Western world tells us to do it. We could do it any way we want to, but we need a collective to actually decide where we want to do this. And we're powerful. We are extremely powerful because of the power of resilience. So if you read that article in my my website called Adversity is Power, you will find that actually each and every one of us are far more powerful than what we've been conditioned to believe.
On that note, appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Take care.